is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Welcome to the African History Network show. It is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. Well, a lot of people are still talking about the One Africa Power and Unity Conference that took place this past weekend, April 30th, Saturday, April 30th, and Sunday, May 1st. So we had a fantastic time. If you attended the conference, you can give us a call. Let us know what you thought about it. 313-778-7600. I saw this story a few days ago in different news sources. And this deals with a slavery lesson gone wrong in Rochester, New York. A slavery lesson gone wrong in Rochester, New York. You may have seen this story. A white teacher in a Rochester, New York middle school, the Rochester School of the Arts, as part of a social studies lesson dealing with slavery, had students pick cotton. He brought in cotton, had students pick cotton. And there was another lesson that he did early in the year where he had students to put on handcuffs. A few students put on handcuffs, and in one case, leg shackles. So I was looking at different articles on this. New York Times has a big story on this. Teachers suspended for telling students to pick cotton in slavery lesson. The incident took place Tuesday, April 26, 2022, at the Rochester School of the Arts. Okay, we're going to talk about this. The teacher is on administrative leave. This article here from the New York Times is from May 2nd, 2022. There's a piece from a local news source. Deb, I was looking at some stories from local news sources there in the Rochester area, and also a story out of Utah, KUTV Channel 2 out of Utah on this. So we're going to talk about this on today's show. And some of the African-American students are traumatized by the experience also. And the question, the question that I have, is pretty interesting. Now, I haven't heard anything. All these anti-critical race theory advocates and saying critical race theory should not be taught in school because it makes white children feel guilty, and they're passing laws in various states. We just talked about I can't remember, Georgia. I can't remember if it was Georgia or one of these former Confederate states just passed another law to restrict what can be taught in school. If you remember this story here out of Tennessee, CNN has this article for September 29th, 2021. Tennessee parents say some books make students feel discomfort because they're white. Okay. They say a new law backs them up. So what I find interesting is all these anti-critical race theory parents and advocates and organizations who are trying to suppress what can be taught about history and slavery and things like this in school. They're silent on this. You have American students who are traumatized by this experience, but the anti-critical race theory people are silent. I wonder, I guess they have laryngitis and amnesia, and their TV doesn't work, their cable doesn't work or something. I'm still trying to figure this one out. Also, there's a study that we talked about a number of times here on this show. It's called Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Teaching Hard History, American Slavery from the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC.org. This is about a 52-page study that documents how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools across the country. It makes numerous recommendations to more accurately teach the history of slavery. It tells you what to do or what not to do. One of the things it tells you don't do is slavery reenactments. Okay, it tells don't put handcuffs on children, don't put leg shackles on children. Okay, so we're going to talk about this also. 10 ways to more correctly teach history, especially the history of slavery. 10 ways to more correctly teach history. All right, so we'll talk about that on today's show as well. And then the news broke yesterday, shortly before we came on the air, the story from Politico.com, dealing with the majority decision on the Mississippi abortion case, which would overturn Roe versus Wade. The majority decision, a draft of the majority decision, which was written back in February of 2022 on this Mississippi abortion clinic case. And Justice Samuel Alito signaled in the draft of the majority opinion that was leaked. He signaled that there are enough Supreme Court justices to overturn Roe versus Wade. All right. So we've seen more fallout from this today. And we know that there was an article from NBC News today that deals with how the leaked opinion is the draft. The draft opinion is legitimate, is authentic. And Chief Justice Roberts says he's ordered an investigation into who leaked the draft of the opinion. All right. There's an article here from NBC News. Supreme Court says draft opinion that would overturn Roe versus Wade is authentic. Chief Justice John Roberts said he has ordered the marshal of the court to launch an investigation to determine who leaked the document to Politico.com. So we talked about this on yesterday's show. We talked about just a little bit on yesterday's show. And what I said regarding the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, I think people who listen to this show are beginning to understand the strategy I was saying should have been implemented. And what I said is that as much as I love John Lewis, even though I disagree with him on certain things, it was a tactical mistake to name the John Lewis Voting Rights Act after John Lewis. I know he wrote the majority of the bill, but the reason why it was a tactical mistake, and I've said this here on this show numerous times, I've said something to that effect also on Roland Martin Unfiltered, is that we knew that you only had 50 votes in the Senate for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Okay, you only have 50 votes, which meant that if you didn't change the filibuster, you were going to need 60. You're going to need 10 Republicans. Okay, we knew that Manchin and Sinema were going to be holdouts on the filibuster. We already knew this. How do we know this? We talked about it here on this show before. One, they were signaling that they were against changing the filibuster rule so that you would only need 51 votes. Two, if you look at the this piece here, this opinion piece here from the Washington Post that deals with the memo in January 2017 that 30 Democrats in the Senate signed on to pledging that they would not change the filibuster rule in the Senate. Okay, this op-ed article for the Washington Post, January 26, 2021, from Mark A. Tyson. Okay, I don't agree with everything in the article, but he lays a good factual context to understand this. Democrats have vigorously used the filibuster. It's pathetic they won't pledge to protect it. Okay. And in this article here that we've talked about here on this show, and when I called in the Reverend Al Sharpton show 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I had to correct him on something he was saying that was incorrect about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. He said Manchin and Sinema voted against the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. That's incorrect. The bill never came to the Senate for a vote because Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina blocked the bill in the negotiations with Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey and Representative Karen Bass of California. And the talks broke down in September of 2021, and Senator Tim Scott said it was over defund the police. And a few days later, like around September 28th, the Fraternal Order of Police and the International Association of Police Chiefs put out a joint statement stating that the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act did not defund the police, and that those two organizations agreed with what was in the bill and how the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was allocating more money for policing, but doing it safely. Okay, so Senator Tim Scott lied, and I called in. We had in Reverend Al Sharpton agreed everything I had to say. Okay, because I broke this down and dealt with facts. But in this article, this is something that I talked about on his show. The reason why, this is why President Joe Biden early in 2021 could not push the voting rights issue harder. He did not have the votes in the Senate. The reason why, in 2017, when Donald Trump was president and Democrats were in the minority, 61 senators, including 30 Democrats, signed a letter promising to preserve the right of the Senate minority to delay or block legislation. Okay, so what happened was when Biden becomes president, you had numerous Democrats who did not want to change the filibuster rules because Democrats used the filibuster or the threat of using the filibuster numerous times under the Trump administration. And this is what this article breaks down, and very few people talk about this. It wasn't until late in 2021 where really you had a mid to late 2021, you had a big shift because of what was coming out of the January 6th committee and because of the voter suppression bills that were being passed in state legislatures, that you really had a shift in Democrats who said we have to change the filibuster. We'll deal with this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. Okay, share this broadcast on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Stand by. All right, how's everybody doing? All right, the new documentary, Heavy as the Crowns, available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. You're going to get some more information about that. All right, stand by, everybody. Where's my article from Politico? How's everybody doing? All right, if you like this type of information, also, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay, so when we come back from the break, I'm going to explain this. I'm going to explain the problem with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and who the bill should have been named after, in my opinion. Okay, how's it? Okay, we got Don, Leslie. All right, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Also register for our 10-week online class that just started up, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, okay? We have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We deal with thousands of years of history, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Back from break in 1 minute. We'll post a link here also for this. Back from break in 1 minute. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. All right, it is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022, and all hell has broken loose in Washington, D.C. You saw the protests outside the Supreme Court today, and women's rights groups, women's reproductive rights groups, they're protesting over the decision from the Supreme Court is expected to come down probably in June of this year, June 2022, to overturn Roe versus Wade. This is what Republicans, this is what Christian evangelicals, this is what the GOP has been working towards for 50 years since the Supreme Court case 1973. Now, right before the break, okay, then we're going to get to the story out of Rochester, New York, dealing with the white teacher who had students picking cotton for a social studies slavery history lesson. Okay, so right before the break, I was talking about this article here, this op-ed article from the Washington Post, and I was explaining why in 2021, Joe Biden couldn't push harder to get the Voting Rights Act passed. Very few people. I watch MSNBC pretty much every day. Half these people, I mean, I'm listening to them and I'm like, a lot of stuff they're saying is just not true. It's just false. You know, this is why I really should be on MSNBC, because I'm listening to some of this stuff. I'm like, no, that's BS. It's not true. You had 30 Democrats, and this is something I said when I called on the Reverend Al Sharpton show also, because what he was saying was factually inaccurate. Manchin and Sinema did not vote against the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I mean, they did not vote against the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And just so people understand, and we talked about this here on the show, Manchin and Sinema did vote for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and also they voted for the Freedom to Vote Act. What they voted against was changing the filibuster rule. Okay, now, if you talk about Manchin and Sinema, who actually voted for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act, and remember, the Freedom to Vote Act was Joe Manchin's bill. Okay, then you also have to talk about the 50 Republicans in the Senate who voted against both voting rights bills, including 16 Republicans who are in the Senate right now, who in 2006 voted to renew the Voting Rights Act. So if you're going to talk about two Democrats, you got to talk about the 50 Republicans also. And oftentimes Republicans get left off the hook. No, you have to, because overwhelmingly they keep voting against Republicans keep voting against our interests, and the Democrats lose control of the House and the Senate. Who the hell you think is going to take control of the House and the Senate? It's going to be the Republicans who consistently vote against our own interests. This is why we have to really strategize and really understand this political chessboard. Okay, you have to understand this political chessboard. So, Democrats. So Manchin and Sinema were the only who stuck to the pledge not to change the filibuster rule. The reason why the other ones changed, the other Democrats changed, is because of filibuster abuse by Republicans. It's too easy to use the filibuster now. This is why Joe Biden on the campaign trail in 2020 when he was running for president said he was against doing away with the filibuster, but he was for going back to a standing talking filibuster where you had to hold the floor and convince people to come over to your position. And once you stop talking or what have you, then you have to take a vote. Okay. Because I'm against understanding the filibuster. I'm against doing away with it altogether. I'm for going back to a talking standing filibuster, which makes it harder to use. It was never designed to keep a vote from taking place. The U.S. Senate is said to be the most deliberative body in the world. It was never designed to keep a vote from taking place. Okay. So you have filibuster misuse. Now people can just, and over the last few years, people can just call from the country club or call from their office to send a majority leader and say they're going to filibuster a bill. Okay. It's too easy to do this. Okay. So read this, because it goes through and breaks down how Democrats used the filibuster or the threat of the filibuster in the Senate during the Trump administration to block harmful bills that Republicans were trying to get passed. That's why a lot of Democrats were against changing the filibuster rules. Okay. But because of the voter suppression bills being passed in state legislatures controlled by Republicans, 19 states passed 34 bills, starting with Georgia, Senate Bill at 202, and Texas. And then all the information coming out of the January 6th committee, okay, dealing with how detailed the plot to overthrow the government was, and to not certify the electoral college votes, okay, during January 6th. That caused a lot of them to say, look, we have to change the filibuster. Senator Maggie Hassan out of New Hampshire, Senator John Tester out of Montana, Senator John Hickenlooper out of Colorado, Senator Tim Kaine, Virginia. It was many of them. Senator Angus King out of Iowa, who's an independent. Many of them said, look, we have to change the filibuster rule. Senator Cory Booker, he changed his position on the filibuster in March of 2021. There's an article from the Huffington Post about this. Okay. So this is why we have to understand this. All right. And people are not understanding this whole landscape. No, Biden could not push harder in 2021 to change the filibuster rule, because there were numerous Democrats who were against changing the filibuster. It wasn't just Manchin and Sinema. They're the ones that took the heat for all these other Democrats that people don't even know. All right. So what I was saying, and I've said this on this show numerous times before, is that it was a tactical mistake to name the John Lewis Voting Rights Act after John Lewis. He was one of my frat brothers, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Love John Lewis. Nothing against him. But understanding that Manchin and Sinema were going to be holdouts, and they were going to not change the filibuster rules, right? Okay, so African Americans make up 3.5% of the population in West Virginia. White people are over 50% of the population in West Virginia, where Joe Manchin is senator from. West Virginia is a very red state. Donald Trump won West Virginia in 2016 and 2020 by 40 votes. Donald Trump won West Virginia in 2016 and 2020 by 40 votes. Okay. Then in Arizona, where Kirsten Sinema is from, African Americans are like 5.2% of the population. All right. So what I said was they should have named the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill after somebody like Susan B. Anthony. Why? Because when you name the bill after Susan B. Anthony, what you do is you put the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution front and center, and you change the dynamics of the fight, as opposed to the voting rights bill being cast as a black issue, an African American issue, and John Lewis, Dr. King, Bloody Sunday, Selma, Alabama, all that stuff, 1965. You deal with who is being targeted now in 2022. And what you do is you put front and center women's voting rights issues, especially white women's voting rights issues. And I said specifically, you got to tap into the women's reproductive rights movement and show them how the voter suppression bills being passed are threatening you and threatening your rights also. Because if they named the bill after Susan B. Anthony, then what you would have done is you would have forced Joe Manchin to tell white women in West Virginia he's not going to stand up and protect their voting rights. You unleash all these white women organizations, you unleash them on Manchin and Sinema and break their political backs and force this through. Emily's List, all these women reproductive rights organizations that are outraged and holy hell, You unleash all that on Manchin and Sinema and some Republicans. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski are looking like idiots now. But if you name it after John Lewis, then what you do is you greatly reduce who is perceived being affected by these voter suppression bills. Now, I don't understand why other people didn't figure this out. I really don't, because I'm sitting back looking at this. I'm like, I don't get paid to do none of this stuff. I'm looking at political scientists and strategists, all this stuff, getting money. Ain't nobody saying this stuff. I don't understand this. So what the I've said this here numerous times on this show. I don't understand. I mean, I'm looking at this. I'm like, look, y'all really don't understand. You see, you always have to explain to people. This is something we learned in business school. Okay. You have to understand a win-win situation. You have to understand how to explain to different factions how this deal over here that you want is going to also positively impact them as well. And this is what's not taking place. This is why I said, look, stop running all these ads talking about Dr. King and the Voting Rights Act. You need to run some ads talking about white women before 1920 who couldn't vote, and talk about how these voter suppression bills are going to affect white women. The women are the majority of there are more women in the country than men. Women are like 51, 52% of the population. White women are a majority minority. It's like, what are you doing? So, okay. We're coming up on a break. When we come back, we're going to deal with this other story that's going to cause you to say, what are they doing? This white teacher in Rochester, New York, taught a social studies lesson about slavery and involved children at a school. 50% of the children are African-American, picking cotton. There was also another incident where he had at least one of the children put on handcuffs and in some cases leg shackles. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. It don't matter whether you use black or not. You can still vote. This don't matter whether I Black Laws Dictionary, all that stuff. I got my U.S. Constitution here, all that stuff. I understand the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1786, 1787. That shit don't mean nothing right now. That don't matter right now. It don't matter if you say black or not. They're still suppressing your voting rights. You can talk about treaties, but at the same time, the federal government has violated over 371 peace treaties with Native Americans as well. I'm familiar with the treaties. I know Washita Moors, all this stuff. I've been to the classes. Stand by. Back from break in 3 minutes. Okay, I'm going to post the information here. You can register for the 10-week online history class. I teach on Saturdays, ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Let's see. Okay, next class is class number 2 is Saturday, May 7th. 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So you don't have to be present in class to watch it. After we do the class, the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. Even a year from now, 2 years from now, you can go back and watch it. Okay, back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by. Okay, we got that. Okay, let's go to this story here. Back for breaking 1 minute.
910, the Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, Future Radio. All right. So I want to go to this story here. We may double back to the women's reproductive rights issue here in just a second. We may double back to that. But be sure to register for our 10-week online class that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. The class is on sale, $80, regularly $130. It's a 10-week online class. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. So you can go back and watch the class anytime, even after the course is over with. You can go back and watch it. Okay. Class number 1 was Saturday, April 23rd. As soon as you register, you can watch class number 1. Class number 2 is going to be Saturday, May 7th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also have a bundle pack, so you can register for all 3 classes. If it's a discount, $120. If you've taken any of my online classes in the past, email me at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You get a 50% discount. Okay, we're going to clip number 1 here in just a second, Shakita. All right, I want to go to this story here, our lead story. So there was this, I saw a number of different news outlets carry this story. There's an article from May 2nd, 2022, updated May 3rd from New York Times. Teachers suspended for telling students to pick cotton in slavery lesson. Parents at a school in Rochester, New York, said Patrick Rausch, I guess is how you pronounce his last name, Rauschsch, Rauschch, a white social studies teacher, has also instructed his 7th grade students to call him massah. He's also instructed his 7th grade students to call him massah. Okay, M-A-S-S-A-H. That's not me saying speaking Ebonics. That's the way it's spelled. Okay, so a teacher in Rochester, New York, was placed on leave and is being investigated after parents said he told students, it's a white teacher, New York Times, they should have said white teacher, after he told students to pick cotton during a lesson on slavery, school district officials said. Now, parents of 7th grade students at Rochester School of the Arts said last week the incident happened Tuesday, April 26, 2022. They said last week, Patrick Rausch, Rauschch, a social studies teacher who is white, gave balls of cotton to his students on Tuesday, April 26, and instructed them to pick the seeds out, Now, the parents also said that Patrick Rausch referred to himself as massah and allowed white students to stop cleaning the cotton when they asked, but not black students. So he allowed the white students to stop working, to stop cleaning the cotton. Okay, but the black students had to keep cleaning the cotton. Okay, I'm not sure if he was channeling a distant ancestor that was a slave owner. I don't know, but I mean, okay. So, Vilma Ramos O'Neill, who has a son in the 7th grade class, her son is named Jameer. She said that this has been going on all year long. All year long. And she said this in a Facebook post describing other racist treatment she said her son had experienced in Mr. Rausch's class. She said, I'm so angry and hurt for these kids. I'm so angry and hurt for these kids. Now, in a statement, Brenda O'Riordan, a spokesman for the Rochester Board of Education, said the district had placed Mr. Rausch on leave and had opened an investigation immediately learning of the allegations. Mr. Rausch could not be reached for comment. Surprise, surprise, surprise. So did he pay? Didn't get the? I mean, maybe he can channel one of his distant ancestors who can tell him to call the New York Times, because New York Times existed, like in the late 1800s, I think, because the New York Times existed in 1914 when they ran the article, the big article, Negro cocaine fiends have turned to sniffing now that whiskey is prohibited. The year before the birth of the nation came out, the New York Times ran a story about the fear of black men being high on cocaine and will they rape white women, and do police officers now need to carry 45 caliber handguns because a 38 is not powerful enough to kill a Negro high on cocaine. That was a big article from the New York Times back in February 8th, 1914. That article came out. Research that. Negro cocaine fiends. Actually, we talked about this before here on the show, and I've dealt with this in some of my lectures. Let me see. We'll pull this up right quick here, because that's actually how I got a subscription to the New York Times. I was a digital subscription. I was doing research on the history of drug laws in this country, and I came across that article. The article is in the New York Times archives because it's over 100 years old. So to be able to gain access to their archives to read the article, I had to get a digital subscription. This article right here. This is from the New York Times. Negro cocaine fiends are a new Southern menace. Murder and insanity increasing among lower class blacks because they have taken to sniffing since deprived of whiskey by prohibition. This is an actual article from February 8th, 1914 from the New York Times. Okay, go research that. All right, now, let's go back to this story here. So the district takes these situations very seriously, as descriptions of what occurred in the classroom by the school community are extremely troubling, Mr. O'Riordan said. Now, Ms. Ramos O'Neill said in the interview that when her son, Jameer O'Neill, who's 13 years old, came home and told her what happened, she initially did not believe him. She said, I have to be honest, I didn't think that would really be something that we would be doing today, she said. I want to go to clip number one. We're going to clip number one, Shakita. This is from April 29th, 2022, WROC Channel 8 out of the Rochester, New York area. Let's go to clip number one, please.
In the Rochester City School District sounding the alarm after their kids came home this week saying a teacher at School of the Arts made racist remarks and had students participate in racist activities. Amel Alhal spoke to two of those parents and their students and has more on this story now.
Adam Teresa, the students I spoke with said this week the teacher in question brought in bags of cotton to school and made students pick out seeds. And on a separate occasion, the students said the teacher brought in shackles and handcuffs to use on the students during a lesson. Their mothers are outraged, and now they are calling on the district to do better.
He said, it's cotton, y'all gonna be picking cotton today. So I immediately was like, oh, I'm not doing that. And then he was like, do it, it's for a good grade.
Janasia Brown is a 7th grader at the School of the Arts and says being forced to pick cotton is not the first time her social studies teacher created a racist and hurtful learning environment.
He said, yes, Mom. He forced me to put handcuffs on my wrist. He put them on my wrist himself.
Vialma Ramos O'Neill says her son came home and told her the same thing.
I honestly did not believe him because I never would have expected anything like that to be happening in this day and age.
The Rochester City School District has been made aware of these incidents. The district told News 8 the 7th grade social studies teacher was placed on leave and an investigation is underway. In a statement, RCSD wrote in part, quote, the district takes these situations very seriously as descriptions of what occurred in the classroom by the school community are extremely troubling. Jamir and Janasia say their teacher favored the white students in class. They said during the cotton picking incident, students in the class got up to throw out their cotton, refusing to participate. But it was only the white students who were allowed to do so.
My daughter gets up to go throw her cotton out. Why she can't go throw her cotton out? And you tell her, no, you have to sit down and finish picking the seeds out your cotton? Why you didn't tell the Caucasian kids they got to sit down and pick the seeds out their cotton? Why mine? Why the rest of them? That's totally unacceptable.
I just felt ashamed to be my own race. He made me feel that it was okay for white people to say this to me. He made me feel like
You made me feel degraded.
The district is asking parents and their students who were involved in this incident to contact them with any information. Adam, Teresa, back to you.
All right, Amel, thank you. Now, in a letter to parents, School of the Arts principal Kelly Nicastro wrote in part, quote, "Please know the social, emotional well-being of our students is incredibly important to us. School counselors are available for students who may need to discuss this situation."
Okay, thanks, Shakita. We're going to clip 2 here in just a second. Okay, so that was from WROC Channel 8 out of Rochester, New York. There was a, let me see, there was a statement here from, I'm going to see if I can pull this up. There was a statement from the school district also. I think we have a statement here from the school district. Okay, this one right here. Let's pull this up here. Pull this graphic from Channel 8 WORC, courtesy of them. History teacher makes student pick cotton. So the district, Rochester City School District, put out this statement. The district takes these situations very seriously, as descriptions of what occurred in the classroom by the school community are extremely troubling. All right, so they've launched an investigation. We're going to let you know what we find out, what the results are of that investigation. I'm going to try to stay on top of this story here. Now, we're coming up on a break here. Oh, it's time for a break. Okay, let's go to break. When we come back, I want to continue here because in the article from the New York Times, Jameer, and you heard him in the clip there from WROC, he talks about, his mother talks about how he's African-American and Puerto Rican. So he already has racial identity issues, and his mother is saying now he does not want to be black. He does not want to be black or African American. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. This is the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. I have to get ready for this next segment. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by, everybody. Back from break in 3 minutes. All right, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. If you like this type of information, also, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. I'm going to post the link here again. Just a minute here. All right, back from break in 2 minutes. Back from break in 2 minutes. Oh, hell. Stand by. Back from break in 1 minute. What's this page not found? Bathroom break in 1 minute. All right. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. Okay, I want to go back to the story. I just sent you clip number 2 again, Shakita. So we're going to go to that here in just a second. So if we look at, I want to go back to this piece here from the New York Times. And they also talk about in here how Jameer, who's 13 years old, Viama Ramos O'Neal's son, how he doesn't want to identify with being Black or African American anymore because of this incident. So if you look at this here, Ms. Ramos O'Neal said in an interview that when her son Jameer O'Neal, 13 years old, came home and told her what happened, she initially did not believe him. But then she saw a Facebook post from another outraged parent named Precious Tross Morris, showing the balls of cotton. She said her daughter Janasia Brown, who's 13 years old, who was also in Mr. Ross's class that day, had brought home from school. Okay, and you heard Precious Tross Morris in the clip from WROC Channel 8. Okay, out of Rochester, New York area. All right, now if we go back and look here at the piece here, so she said my daughter is traumatized. Okay, Precious Tross Morris said my daughter is traumatized. She said this in the interview, adding that the day after the episode, her daughter did not want to go to school and purposely missed her bus to avoid attending Mr. Ross's class. Her daughter did not want to go to school and purposely missed her bus to avoid attending Mr. Ross's class. She says she speaks, Precious Tross Morris said of her daughter, she speaks in a low tone of voice like she's saddened. She barely smiles. She went on to say he made a mockery of slavery. He made a mockery of slavery. Now, both Ms. Tross Morris and Ms. Ramos O'Neal wrote on Facebook that their children had separately told them that in another lesson, Mr. Ross had forced them to wear handcuffs as part of a magic trick and ordered them to free themselves. He forced them to wear handcuffs as part of a magic trick and forced them to free themselves. Now, the students were berated for not being able to escape, both parents said. When he couldn't get out, when he couldn't get out of it, Ms. Ramos O'Neal said about her son, he said, Mr. Ross responded, "It's okay, your ancestors couldn't do it either." Okay, I want to go to clip number 2 here. This is from let's see, clip 2 is from KUTV channel 2 out of Salt Lake City, Utah. New York State teacher on leave after controversial cotton picking lesson. Let's go to clip 2, please, Shakita.
Is on leave tonight over a controversial lesson on slavery.
I double looked at my child and took my eyes off the road because I really could not believe that my daughter was holding a piece of cotton.
The principal at Rochester's School of the Arts says the lesson taught on Tuesday is of great concern and that the district is investigating. Good evening. I'm Doug Embledge. Jenny Ryan's off tonight. That teacher was put on leave after allegedly having students pick seeds out of cotton and asking students to put on handcuffs or shackles. 13 Lamb's Dalton Williams spoke with one of the students in the class tonight and his mother. Dalton?
Yes, some 7th grade students were sent home with cotton after having to pick out seeds. And for some parents and students, that lesson on
when I saw another parent post about it and share her story, I believed it then. And then I approached my son and asked him to, just share a little bit more about what happened, as well as any other incidents.
Students say this isn't the first time the same teachers taught lessons about slavery that made students uncomfortable.
I walked in class and I sat down. He pulled out handcuffs. It was like, who's willing to put these on? Though we're all shocked.
She said she did not want to put on the handcuffs. And he told her if she do not put them on and try them on, that he was going to send her to the counselor or the principal's office.
The principal of the school sent a letter to parents on Thursday saying the lesson was of great concern and that the allegations are being taken seriously. Some parents are calling on the district to fire the teacher.
So he needs to be terminated. He should not be getting this little break at our expense. And we also hope that his teaching license can be revoked permanently.
In situations like this, a teacher could resign or go before a review board. That board could side with the teacher or, at the other extreme, revoke the teacher's license. Doug?
Okay. All right. So that's from KUTV Channel 2. That's from May 3rd, 2022. Now, Ms. Ramos O'Neill said of her son, Jameer, who's 13 years old, he's African-American and Puerto Rican. He already struggles with his racial identity. She always tried to teach him that he is perfect. He is a perfect blend of two rich cultures that have a very strong historical background, and that he's a strong king, and that he should never be ashamed to be one or the other. But he told her that after the encounter with Mr. Roche, he didn't want to identify as Black anymore because the non-Black students appeared to get preferential treatment in class. So this is white supremacy in class. So I'm trying to figure out where the anti-critical race theory people who said that lessons dealing with race could make white children feel discomfort, make white children feel uncomfortable. Why are they so silent here? Like this article here, September 29, 2021, CNN.com, Tennessee parents say some books make students feel discomfort because they're white. Okay. Well, why aren't you talking about African-American children who made to feel discomfort because of this white teacher here disrespecting their history and culture? All right. Okay. So now this school district is, let's see, the school is 50%, about 50% African-American, and it's 65%, and about 65% of the students are considered economically disadvantaged. This is the School of the Arts, the Rochester School of the Arts. Okay. All right. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep going for a few more minutes. We're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. You can support us, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for the online classes. And then also the new documentary, Heavy is the Crown, with Professor James Small, Professor Kabahai Walter Kamene, Tony Browder, from director Amadeus Christ, and others, is at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace. All right, stand by. Okay, so I want to go to this study here very quickly. This is from the Southern Poverty Law Center, and this deals with teaching hard history, American slavery. I've talked about it here on the show before. Teaching hard history, American slavery, from the Southern Poverty Law Center. We may talk about this again later in the week, but this is about a 52-page study which documents how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools all across the country. Teaching Hard History, American Slavery, from the Southern Poverty Law Center. You can download the study. I downloaded it, took it to a printer, got it printed up. So this was it was a survey of 1,000. It was a survey of 1,000 high school students, high school seniors, I should say, 1,000 high school seniors. And they did the survey to find out what they knew about the history of slavery. Okay, what was being taught about the history of slavery. And this study documents how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools across the country, and it makes numerous recommendations to more accurately teach the history of slavery. And there was a article from TheAHNTic.com from February 1st, 2018. This is how I first found out about this study. And this article from The Atlantic came out, it was first day of African American History Month in 2018. Name of the study is called What Kids Are Learning About Slavery. What kids are really learning about slavery. What kids are really learning about slavery. And let me pull this up here. So they did this survey of 1,000 high school seniors, and they found that they knew very little really about the history of slavery. They also surveyed some some social studies teachers as well. Okay. So this article right here, let me flip over to this article. What kids are really learning about slavery. A new report finds that the topic is mistaught and often sentimentalized, and students are alarmingly misinformed as a result. Students are alarmingly misinformed as a result. So we look at this briefly here. Page 2 of the article says, let's see here. Okay, school assignments on slavery routinely draw national headlines and scorn. Yet beyond the outraged parents and school district apologies lies a complex and entrenched set of education challenges. A new report released by the Southern Poverty Law Center's Teaching Tolerance Project points to the widespread failure to accurately teach the hard and nuanced history of American slavery and enslaved people. Collectively, the report finds that slavery is mistaught, mischaracterized, sanitized, and sentimentalized, leaving students poorly educated and contemporary issues of race and racism misunderstood, leaving students poorly educated and contemporary issues of race and racism misunderstood. In what it describes as the first analysis of its kind, Teaching Tolerance conducted online surveys of 1,000 American high school seniors and more than 1,700 social studies teachers across the country. Online surveys of more than 1,000 American high school seniors and more than 1,700 social studies teachers across the country. The group also reviewed 10 commonly used U.S. history textbooks and examined 15 sets of state standards to assess what students know, what educators teach, what publishers include in textbooks, and what standards vis-a-vis slavery, and what standards require vis-a-vis slavery. All right. Okay, so among 12th graders, only 8% of 12th graders surveyed could identify slavery as the cause of the Civil War. Only 8%, okay, could identify slavery as the cause of the Civil War. Fewer than 1/3, or 32%, correctly named the 13th Amendment as the formal end of slavery. Okay. because most of them thought it was the Emancipation Proclamation. 35% thought it was the Emancipation Proclamation, which did not legally free the enslaved Africans. It's the 13th Amendment, when it was ratified December 6, 1865, when Georgia ratified the 13th Amendment. And fewer than half, or 46%, identified the Middle Passage as the transport of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to North America. All right, now, if we look at the teacher survey, let's see, the students are dismal protection. Let's look at this some more here. Okay, the student results, which report the labels dismal, extend beyond factual errors to a failure to grasp key concepts underpinning the nature and legacy of slavery. They go beyond factual errors and really speak to a failure of a majority of these students to grasp key concepts underpinning the nature and legacy of slavery. Fewer than one quarter, only 22% of participating high seniors knew that protections for slavery were embedded in America's founding documents, like the U.S. Constitution. Only 22% of high school seniors surveyed. Okay, there were 1,000 high school seniors surveyed. Only 22% knew that protections for slavery were embedded in America's founding documents. That rather than a peculiar institution of the South, slavery was a constitutionally enshrined right. And we know Article 4, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution laid the foundation for the Fugitive Slave Acts of 1793 and 1850. And fewer than 4 in 10 students surveyed, or 39%, understood how slavery, quote, shaped the fundamental beliefs of Americans about race and whiteness. Only 39% of high school seniors surveyed, of the 1,000 surveyed, understood how slavery, quote, shaped the fundamental beliefs of Americans about race and whiteness. Now, the reason why this is so important, okay, is because these people are going to grow up and they're going to vote. They're going to be politicians. They're going to be doctors, lawyers, police officers, teachers, all of this. Okay. So what happens when you have people who are in these positions and they are ignorant of history and they're ignorant of how we got to where we are? All right. So this is why this is extremely important. And when you look at the voter suppression bills today, when you look at these bills being written by Republicans in state legislature, and also written by dark money groups like Heritage Action for America, which is the sister organization to the Heritage Foundation, and they've created these boilerplate voter suppression bills that are being pushed by Republicans in state legislatures. This is what happens oftentimes, and the people who support these bills, the voters who vote for these politicians, who pass these voter suppression bills, who vote against the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, who vote against the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, things like this. This is the policies you support and who you elect to public office largely is based upon your understanding of history and your understanding of politics. Okay. Well, if you don't take any type of civics class until you get to college, like when you take political science or you take some type of American government class, okay, and if you don't understand history, and just like the article from that we've talked about here before from Time Magazine that deals with Reconstruction, this one right here, and the class I teach on Sundays deals with the Civil War and Reconstruction. We do it 1865 to 1968. from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968, because that's a critical period of history to understand how we got to where we are today and understand where we need to go from here. Well, the history of Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877, is taught very little in schools, which directly has an impact on conditions today and what's taking place politically today. And most Americans don't understand any of this. Americans are very ignorant of history. A new report finds that 45 states are failing. This is Time Magazine. A new report finds that 45 states are failing to teach students about the period that shaped race relations after the Civil War. Okay, that's the Reconstruction era. Reconstruction. This article is from January 12th, 2022. Okay, in the aftermath of the insurrection a year ago, the January 6th insurrection, instigated and inspired by the traitor-in-chief Benedict Donald. In the aftermath of the insurrection a year ago at the U.S. Capitol, many leading historians drew parallels between the violence on January 6, 2021, between that violence and the Reconstruction era period of political revolution directly following the U.S. Civil War, which was 1861 to 1865. Many leading historians drew parallels between the violence on January 6, 2021, and the Reconstruction era, the period of political revolution directly following the American Civil War. Now, we saw, quote, Eric Foner, historian Eric Foner, said that the events that we saw reminded me very much of the Reconstruction era and the overthrow of Reconstruction, which was often accompanied or accomplished, I should say, by violent assaults on elected officials, And this is why you had to have the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, the third of the four enforcement acts, because they were killing so many, they were attacking and killing elected officials, Republican elected officials, African-American and white elected officials were being killed in southern states, especially South Carolina, which is where the Civil War started, April 12, 1861. Okay, so in October of 1861, President Ulysses S. Grant implemented martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina. Okay, to crack down on the Ku Klux Klan and the attacks on these elected officials and intimidating the African Americans, trying to keep them from voting, things like this. All right, if you go back to this article here quickly. All right, let's see here. Hold on, where are we? Okay, right here. All right, so Eric Foner, Pulitzer Prize winning historian and author of Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877, said this in an interview with the New Yorker magazine published a week later. Now, scholars say studying the aftermath of the Civil War can help put in context many of the most seminal events in the U.S. in recent years. Scholars, historians say that studying the aftermath of the Civil War, which is the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877, can help put in context many of the most seminal events in the U.S. in recent years, from the brutal murder of George Floyd by police in 2020 to the voter suppression laws enacted by enacted after African-American voters played a big role in helping Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be elected president and vice president in 2020. But despite the timeliness of the era in today's climate, many students in American schools will not get a full education on Reconstruction until they go to college. But most of them are going to go to college, most likely. the majority, okay, many students in American schools will not get a full education on Reconstruction until they go to college. In social studies standards, for 45 out of 50 students, so in social studies standards in 45 out of 50 states and the District of Columbia, discussion of Reconstruction is partial or non-existent. In 45 out of 50 states and the District of Columbia, discussion of Reconstruction is either partial or non-existent, according to historians who reviewed the period, how the period is discussed in K through 12 social study standards for public schools nationwide. In a report produced by the education nonprofit, the Zen Education Project, the study's authors say they are concerned that American children will grow up to be uninformed about a critical period of history that helps explain why full racial equality remains unfulfilled today. You have to understand where we are today and how we got here. You have to understand the historical events that led us to this point, so you can understand where we need to go from here and the laws and policies that have to be put in place. Okay, so if we go back quickly here to the okay, so we talked about the article from the Atlantic. I want to go back quickly here because there's a piece that deals with teachers. This article from the Atlantic that talks about the study from the Southern Poverty Law Center, Teaching Hard History American Slavery. Okay, now examining this is the article from the Atlantic. What kids are really learning about slavery. Examining the teachers' survey results might help explain why students struggled to answer questions on American enslavement. Educators are struggling themselves. Educators are struggling themselves. While teachers overwhelmingly, or 92%, claim they are comfortable discussing slavery in their classroom. Now, this is before the anti-critical race theory laws were being passed. This article here is from February 1st, 2018. While teachers overwhelmingly, 92%, claim they are comfortable discussing slavery in their classroom, their teaching practices reveal profound lapses because many teachers are not properly equipped to teach the history of slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow era, etc. Only slightly more than half, or 52%, teach their students about slavery's legal roots. Okay, only 52% teach their students about slavery's legal roots in the nation's founding document, while just 53% emphasize the extent of slavery outside of the antebellum South, okay, which means before the Civil War, okay? So they're largely just talking about slavery in the South, but not slavery that existed up north, even though the northern states are going to largely abolish slavery first, but they had slavery at one point in all the 13 colonies. And 54% teach the continuing legacy of slavery in today's society. All right. Okay, so read the rest of this here, this article here. What kids are really learning about slavery, from theatlantic.com. And this is about the study from the Southern Poverty Law Center. If we look quickly here at the study, I want to look at page 10 briefly here. And this is the PDF of it. You can go to splcenter.org, Southern Poverty Law Center's website, and you can download the study. Let me see here. I want to go to page 10. So Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries, who's a nephew to one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, he was on the committee of the board of advisors that put this together, and I've interviewed him before here on the show before. He's an associate professor of history at Ohio State University. Okay, so on page 10, I think it's page 10 of the study that I want. Okay, right here. Now, this woman right here, this is a former slave. In the 1930s and 40s, the Works Progress Administration, the WPA, Works Progress Administration, and Farm Security Administration photographed the daily lives of thousands of formerly enslaved people, tenant farmers, and sharecroppers, former slaves, tenant farmers, and sharecroppers. This photograph of a woman born in enslavement was taken in Greensboro, Alabama in 1941. Okay, now all the last of the former slaves died in the 1950s, which really complicates reparations. If you look at what's taking place in California, the reparations task force, California Reparations Task Force, and we talked about this here on the show, how they voted 5-4 to distribute reparations based upon lineage as opposed to race. Okay, so all of the 2.6 million, I think it's 2.6 million African Americans in California, all of them are not going to get reparations. You're going to have to trace your lineage to someone who was in the U.S., someone of African descent in the U.S. prior to the 19th century. Okay, so if they were here prior to 1899, you'll get some type of reparations when they figure out what it is and get it passed through the state legislature and signed into law. If your ancestor came here in 1900 and 1901, you wouldn't qualify. But it's going to be lineage based, because based upon the 1964 Civil Rights Act, it's illegal to have race-based policies, meaning policy for only one race of people. Okay, that's illegal based upon the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which is why 50 million African Americans, whatever number you want to put there, they're not all getting reparations. That's not going to happen. Okay, so page 10. So they lay out 7 key problems. They lay out 7 key problems with the way slavery is taught. Okay, 7 key problems with current practices. We teach about slavery without context, preferring to present the good news before the bad news. They don't teach it chronologically, largely the history, and don't teach it don't give the context. We teach about slavery without context, preferring to present the good news before the bad news. Okay, in elementary schools, students learn about the Underground Railroad and Harriet Tubman or other feel-good stories often before they learn about slavery. In high school, there's overemphasis on Frederick Douglass, abolitionists, and the Emancipation Proclamation, and little understanding of how slave labor built the nation. So they're not dealing with, largely, they're not dealing with things chronologically and teaching students really about context. 2, we tend to subscribe to a progressive view of American history that can acknowledge flaws only to the extent that they have been addressed and solved. Our vision of growing ever more perfect stands in the way of our need to face the continuing legacy of the past. 3, we teach about the American enslavement of Africans as an exclusively Southern institution, but they don't talk about it in the North, and how also you had Northern textile mills that and textile factories that were dependent upon cotton grown in the South and brought up to the textile factories and turned into clothing and products and things like this. Okay. Number 4, we rarely connect slavery to the ideology that grew up to sustain and protect it, white supremacy. We rarely connect slavery to the ideology that grew up to sustain and protect it, white supremacy. Number 5, we often rely on pedagogy poorly suited to the topic. We often rely on pedagogy poorly suited to the topic. When we asked teachers to tell us about their favorite lesson when teaching about slavery, dozens of teachers proudly reported classroom simulations, which is a no-no. Simulation of traumatic experiences is not shown to be effective as a learning strategy and can harm vulnerable children, like the story we just talked about out of Rochester, New York, with the children picking cotton and one of the students being put in handcuffs. There's another report of leg shackles being used on at least one or two of the students also. Quote, we rarely make connections to the present. We rarely make connections to the present. How can students develop a meaningful understanding of the rest of American history if they do not understand the scope, if they do not understand, how can students develop a meaningful understanding of the rest of American history? They do not understand the scope and lasting impact of enslavement. If they do not understand the scope and lasting impact of enslavement, Reconstruction, the Great Migration, Reconstruction 1865 to 1877, Great Migration 1915, 1970, Harlem Renaissance dealing with the 1910s, 20s, 30s, and the Civil Rights Movement do not make sense when so divorced from the arc of American history. So you have to teach all this within context and teach this history chronologically. 7, we tend to center on the white experience when we teach about slavery. We tend to center on the white experience when we teach about slavery. Too often, the varied lived experience of enslaved people is neglected while educators focus on the broader political, and economic impacts of slavery. Politically and socially, we focus on what white people were doing in the time leading up to the Civil War. Okay, so then they go through and a framework for teaching American slavery. So then they go through and they lay out ways to better teach the history of slavery. And this is okay, so they have 4: improve instruction about American slavery and fully integrate it into U.S. history. Use original historical documents. Textbook authors and curriculum developers should expand their repertoire of historical documents beyond the usual narratives to do a better job of representing the diverse voices and experience of enslaved persons. Okay, this will help teachers struggling to navigate the vast array of online resources and archives to put usable documents into classrooms with accompanying instructional material. 3, make textbooks better. Okay, there is considerable work to be done to improve the stories that textbooks tell about the history of American slavery. Texts should do more to convey the realities of slavery throughout the colonies. They should also make intentional connections, good and bad, present, by showing both the lasting contributions of African cultures and ideas, as well as the enduring impact of racial oppression on contemporary American life. 4, strengthen curriculum. States, through their standards supporting frameworks and curriculum requirements, signal the districts, schools, and teachers about important material and how to address it, about important material and how to address it. They are failing at conveying the need to teach about the history of slavery. They are failing at conveying the need to teach about the history of slavery. States and in local controlled jurisdictions, districts should scaffold this learning early and often, refusing to shy away from difficult topics and conversations. Teaching about slavery is hard. It requires often difficult conversations about race and a deep understanding of American history. Learning about slavery is essential if we are ever to come to grips with racial differences that continue to divide our nation. Now is the time to change the way we teach and learn about slavery. Okay, so that's on page 11. So you can download this study. You can read the rest of it here. Teaching Hard History of American Slavery from the Southern Poverty Law Center, splc.org. All right. If you'd like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. We have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and also PayPal.me/the AHN Show. So this helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN Show, SHOW. When you go to it, it says Michael and shows my picture there. These other ones here are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. This is our official tag, $ the AHN Show, SHOW. You can click here also. Is the PayPal button. And then we have, you can register for my online history classes. Saturday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That's on sale $80, regularly $130. It's a 10-week online history class. We do thousands of years of history, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Class number 2 is Saturday, May 7th, 2022. And then on Sunday, class number 1 of from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement, 1865 to 1968 starts up. Okay, and we start in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase and the Haitian Revolution. And we go through history. We deal with what leads up to the Civil War taking place. Then we do a Reconstruction and Jim Crow era, World War I, World War II, Great Migration, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network can focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. All right. Thanks for joining us.